So this is from Karen Allen 5208. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's several questions in this, but I want to break down some of it, and then we'll come back, and if there's time, we'll answer as many as we can, because she brings up the archaic words, which is, something that we can pretty easily explain. I've got those references pulled up, but she says, I'm still on the fence about the Mandela effect. The scriptures that explain the changes or the comparison of Revelation 22:10 and Daniel 12:4. Is God's word sealed or not? Okay, so and then she gets into specific examples between like wineskins and bottles and some of the different archaic words, like unicorn that appears in the Bible, or matrix, or all of the different. There's other so-called alleged archaic words like confederacy, sheriff, bank. There's a whole list of them. But she talks here about saying that the reason is explaining from the Mandela effect perspective. And it's even the Mandela effect perspective, I think, is very splintered, because I've spoken to different people that believe this, and they all have different explanations and reasons. But I thought this one was good to look at least. So let's look at Daniel 12:4 first, and I'll answer her question. And if you have any thoughts on it, Wendy, love you to jump in as well after. But Daniel 12:4 says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." So God tells Daniel, as Daniel is given this prophecy, which becomes the written book of Daniel. God tells him to shut up the words and seal the book when he's talking about, in context, that little book that he's given in Daniel 12 earlier in the chapter. That little book that Daniel eats, but he's told to seal that book and to shut up the words till the time of the end. And that's sort of the key here, because God doesn't instruct him to seal it up forever. He instructs him to seal it up until the time of the end. Here it is, time of the end. Well, then she brings up Revelation 22:10. So take a look at that as well. Revelation 22:10, and he saith unto me, seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. So I'm not sure what exact perspective she's coming from in those, two verses, but she asks the question, is God's word sealed or not? Because you're getting, an Old Testament verse where God tells Daniel to seal the book. Then in the last book of the Bible, the New Testament book of Revelation, God tells John the Apostle, different prophet, different time, to not seal, or seal not the sayings of the prophecy. Or then he says, the time is at hand. So, the explanation is really right in front of your face. I think without me even explaining it, many of you have already gotten it, which is that Daniel was told to seal the book because the time was not yet. It wasn't yet the end times. So he's told to seal that book even to the time of the end, the last days, the end times. The book of Revelation describes the end times and defines it and says, here it is. This book of Revelation is written for the end times, for that time, or for the time is at hand. So now that it's that time, now that we're in the last days, and we are in the last days according to 1 John and Hebrews and Acts and a bunch of other books, and I'll share some of those verses with you as well. But now that we are in the last days, and the last days have really begun, like 2,000 years ago, once Christ came and died and was resurrected. That began the last days when the early church was forming, the native church. And now it's we're not in the very last day. That'll be when when Jesus returns. But we are technically, theologically speaking, already in the last days. And so there's no reason for it to be sealed anymore. That revelation has been given. That's why it's called the Book of Revelation. And that knowledge has now been revealed. The mystery has been revealed as Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That's what was being sealed. And his return now, his first, ascension to heaven, and now his coming, second coming, his return. So we see that even in 1 John 2:18, little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. So this is back in John's day, the apostle saying it is the last time right now. And so he says it twice, just so you get it. It is the last time. It is the last time. We are in the end times. We just don't know how long the end times will take. And of course, it'll accelerate at the onset of the 7-year tribulation, which will be cut short. That gets into a whole nother topic. But we see also, there's so many verses on this. Hebrews 1, 1 through 2, God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, right? That's how we know it's these last days at the revelation of Jesus Christ, through whom he speaks to us, being the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the written word is Christ's words. It's him, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. And finally, Acts 2, again, there's just to show that we are in the last days, but the last days, we don't know how long they'll last. They'll accelerate during the 7-year tribulation, which hasn't yet begun. But in Acts 2:16, but this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel, and it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out of my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. So again, it's, he describes it as the last days. So that's the discrepancy between Daniel and Revelation. It's not a discrepancy. It's just different dispensations of time. And I'm not using that word.
Well, and I think it's different book.
And it's different books. It's different.
Right.
There is no error. There is no change in any of these verses. But I wanted to, real quick, I also want to talk about the kid. He said, but every generation throughout history thought they were living in the end times. And that's true, but we all have been in the end times. That was my point, is that from the time of Jesus being on the earth and dying and resurrecting and ascending, because he was the first to be resurrected, to be glorified. He's the first among the dead, right? The first and the last. And so he's ultimately, that ultimately began the end times. Now, a lot of people feel like, oh no, the last days, the final day is here and now. It's going to be in our generation, and it very well could be. But that's just the very final days. That's like the 7-year tribulation is what you're referring to, and the wrath, and then the wrath of God, the rapture, and then the wrath of God, and all of that. And many people are wrong about that. It wasn't in their generation. No one knows the day or the time. We don't know if it's going to be, in our generation, if it's the next 3 years, the next 30 years, the next 300 years, the next 3,000 years. We just don't know, because even though it looks like we're going through and getting closer and closer, and we are, every day we're getting closer to the tribulation. But we just don't know. Things can turn around, and God could give us another 100, years, a golden age.
That's a reprieve.
A reprieve, right? So that doesn't negate, Revelation and Daniel, and the misconnection there.